600 wins, 6 Georgia State championships, 16 regional championships, 2-time National Coach of the Year, first team from Georgia to win the City of Palms Classic, the nation's #1 high school tournament, first team in Georgia history to attend the Dick's Sporting Goods National Tournament of Championships. He's produced numerous NBA players and professional basketball players all over the world. It's real basketball talk. It's real help and real life with Coach Doug Lipscomb on the BG Podcast Network.
And welcome to episode 4 of Real Life Basketball with yours truly, Darren Sutherland, and the 600-win coach, state champion, Coach Doug Lipscomb. Coach, how you doing this afternoon?
It's good to be here.
Good. Another good week of basketball we've just watched. Cody, our producer's here. Cody, fresh back from Raleigh, North Carolina, and his big hockey trip. We'll talk to him a little bit later about that. But, hey, want to remind you before we get any further, the Carriage Automotive Group Classic coming up this weekend, this Saturday, starting at 2:30 at Milton High School, featuring the likes of Holy Innocents versus Trinity Christian, Lithonia versus Johnson of Savannah, Shiloh versus Langston Hughes, Pebblebrook versus Jonesboro. We're going to talk about a Pebblebrook graduate in detail in just a minute. And Mr. Colin Sexton in Milton versus Rockdale, and that's coming up this Saturday at Milton High School, and we'll talk more in detail about that. But, Coach, first things first, we got to get it out of the way because it's going to happen this Saturday, not just this tournament, but because we're sports fans, let's just get it out of the way because it's on your mind, it's on my mind, it's on every sports fan in the world's mind. Even though this is real-life basketball, I promise you in the gyms and in the locker rooms, they're talking about this. Who's going to be the Final Four in football this weekend?
Wow. It's going to be tough. I can't wait to see how they're going to play this whole thing out, the scenario. But if you're looking at Clemson, Alabama, I feel bad for the Rolling Tide. But I think we got to get Georgia in there somewhere.
You know what? I think right now the top 4 teams in America are Auburn, Georgia, Clemson, and Alabama. But there's no way in the world they're going to allow them 4 to finish because of one thing. And you know what that one thing is, Coach? It's a 5-letter word.
Money.
Money. You're exactly right. Money. There's no way they're going to keep out the Big Ten winner between Wisconsin and Ohio State. No way in the world because you don't have a Pac-10 going. And the playoffs are going to be at the Rose Bowl and at the Sugar Bowl. So right there it tells me they're going to take Oklahoma and they're going to match up the Big Ten winner, either Wisconsin or Ohio State. And let me tell you this, Ohio State fans, if Ohio State goes, it's a travesty. Penn State won the Big Ten last year with 2 losses, came in and beat a Michigan team. Ohio State wasn't even in the championship game, and Penn State didn't get to go. And I'll leave it at that, Coach. I'll leave it at that. And the SEC, who you got, Coach? You got to pick one, Auburn or Georgia. Who you like in the SEC? Come on, I'm going to put you up against the wall.
Auburn.
He's going with Auburn. He's going with Auburn, man alive. We'll come back to that in a little bit because I want to talk to you about coming back and playing somebody. I got to go with my dogs. I'm a homer, so I got to go with my dogs. And then then Clemson, Miami. I'm assuming Clemson. You going to take Clemson?
Oh, yeah.
You know what? I've said this for the past 5 years. There's not a better man in this world that you would want to coach your son than Mark Richt, okay? But when it gets down to winning, the big one, Mark Richt just can't do it. And you know what? There's not a better man, I don't think, in America coaching any type of athlete than Mark Richt. But he's not going to beat Clemson this week, and that's the way it is. So I'm saying the Final Four for me is Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Ohio State, even though I don't think Ohio State belongs. My buddy David Sams up in Nashville is the biggest Ohio State fan in America, but I think the Roll Tide should be there. And regardless, Saban's earned that right on 1 loss. What do you think?
I agree. Saban, they had a miscue, but now all those miscues that you're talking about, Auburn was playing real good football. And I'm gonna tell you like this: I say Auburn, that's to get the Georgia fans motivated. If you can't beat them this time, you don't need to say anything.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Georgia's a long time coming, and if Georgia goes to the national championship, I'm going to that game. And people say, "Why are you going to that game? Why would you spend the money to go to that game?" Because I'm 48 years old and I'll never see them go for another one probably, and I want to see it before I die. Because you know what? You start thinking about things like that when you get old. Let's keep talking about Alabama and talk about our boy Avery Johnson. The big story this week is Avery Johnson playing 3-on-3 or 3-on-5, and they almost beat Minnesota with 3 players because everybody else got suspended. Coach, what you hearing about that?
Well, I watched the game, and I didn't think that was fair for the whole bench to be sent to the locker room. And then you left with 5 guys. One of them foul out, and the other one gets hurt, and they still played their hearts out. So my shout goes out to Colin Sexton for dropping 40 on them. And we've always seen that when he was growing up. So he's just making everybody else see it right now. That's a good deal.
Have you ever been, from a coach's perspective, have you ever been in that situation before where your whole bench got suspended or you got down to 3 players coaching in a game?
I got down to 5, and one of those kids had 4 fouls, so we're just praying he don't foul out. And I think the other team shot like 42 free throws that night.
So I didn't see the game. I didn't even see the highlights of the game. Saw a lot of games this weekend. I picked last week Alabama over Minnesota. Would have been an upset. Minnesota was ranked number 23 at the time, and Alabama wasn't ranked. I think Alabama's going to get some looks now that they almost beat them with 3 players. But on defense, were they running like a triangle without 2? Is that what they were running on defense, or they're trying to run
it was like a 1-2.
It's a 1-2. It's a 1-2. A triangle without 2, guys. A triangle without 2. But Colin Sexton, the freshman from Pebblebrook High School in Mableton, Georgia, showed out and showed what he's all about. And I believe, you know what that's going to do? I think that game right there is going to help Avery Johnson's recruiting. I really do. Because if people sees what he can do with 3 people, let him beat Kentucky. Let him beat Florida. Let him beat Missouri in the SEC. And Alabama, folks, Coach called it at the beginning of the year when we were talking about sleepers in the SEC. He said Alabama was one team to be reckoned with, and Avery, he's got them playing. He's got them playing. So great win there. PK80. Biggest tournament in the history of college basketball to start the season, some are saying. Last night's games were a preseason Final Four mini-saw. North Carolina, let's talk about the ugliest game I've saw all year long in North Carolina versus Michigan State. Michigan State, 12 turnovers, and was still up by almost 20 at the half, Coach. What's going on? Is it preseason jitters? What's going on?
No, it's not preseason. It's game time. I think they just picked the wrong night to be cold, and they were very inconsistent. And Michigan State is always going to play tough defense.
Well, when you're UNC and, you know, Roy, where's your players? Roy's getting out-recruited this day and time. I mean, really, when you look at teams like Kentucky, Duke, Arizona, you know, believe it or not, folks, UNC is one of the top programs in America. But let's hope they sign our guy Zion Williamson out of South Carolina. That's where the rumor is. But they need a fresh touch up there in Carolina. May is pretty good, but he's not what Duke's got. I think it's going to be a long year in the ACC. I mean, UNC come into this game ranked number 9. After losing last night, I think by 12 to Michigan State or 10 double digits to Michigan State, it was kind of rough.
They're going to have to regroup. But I will say this again. Duke for sure has 2 NBA players in that front line. When you look at Carter Jr. and then you look at Bagley, it's no doubt those are NBA players right now.
Right. I would say this. Carter is Wendell Carter's a good player. He's a good player. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say this right here today on this podcast. Mr. Bagley is the best player to ever put a Duke uniform on his back, period. You heard me say that today. And, Coach, you may disagree with me, but I can't think of a better player in the past 30 years to put a uniform on his back than Mr. Bagley when it's all said and done. Now, people may say, oh, Kyrie Irving, Mr. Williams. Coach, what do you think? I mean, you Christian Laettner, what you got? I mean, this guy's walked in averaging a double-double, 30 and 11 for a Krzyzewski team. I mean, that don't happen.
Well, Kyrie, he's proven that he's an NBA player. And, Mr. Bagley, I have to say he's in the top 3. How about that?
Top 3. There you go. So Coach's not going to go with me on that. But Mr. Bagley, when it's all said and done, will be one of the top players to play. Let me ask you this. What NBA player, I'm going to put you on the spot, and this is one of them things Coach says, God, we don't even talk about this before the show, and then you come in here and you throw me a curveball and just have to think. But who does Mr. Bagley remind you of right now, NBA-wise?
Mr. Bagley is a combination of every position you could want. He could play small forward, big forward. He can shoot the 3, handle a basketball. He's all around.
Kevin Garnett?
Very similar, but better ball handling skills for sure. And he don't have a problem with shooting the 3 and knocking it down. No,
he nailed some threes. I mean, I thought at first he was a Tim Duncan-like, and then I saw him shoot the 3. And I said, man, he's got a little Dirk Nowitzki in him, shooting the 3. So Bagley's going to be something special, folks. And if you hadn't saw Bagley and Duke play, he's worth sitting down and watching the Duke Blue Devils. And Duke came back last night. They were down, and they were down to Florida and come back and beat Florida. And Florida's not a bad little SEC team either, are they, Coach?
No, Florida's going to be in the mix. I like their athleticism. They get up and down the court. And, I mean, it's going to be a good battle when it comes down to Alabama and Florida.
Alabama's a good team. Florida's a good team. Kentucky, still only one loss to Kansas, so Big Blue Nation, hey, whatever. I think Kentucky's the most overranked team in America. I mean, they're dropping in the polls. They need to keep dropping in the polls because I don't even think, Coach, you're going to laugh at me when I say this. I don't even think they're the best team in the Northern Kentucky area. I believe Xavier could beat them. I believe Cincinnati could beat them head up right now. Right now. So I'll just throw that out there to the Kentucky faithful. They may not like us at all. Hey, want to thank those listeners that we saw listening to us in faraway lands like the Philippines last week. Big shout out to the folks in the Philippines listening to us on Real Life Basketball, and folks in Canada, Poland, and all across the world. Thank you for listening to Real Life Basketball. If you want to help the Coach Doug Lipscomb and myself, how can you help us? Tell your friends to go on their podcast, on their cell phone. Everybody has one. And type in Real Life Podcast and listen to us. Hear some real basketball information, some real basketball news, and some real information about life. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, we got some great interviews coming, so we don't want you to miss that whatsoever. Coach, I'm gonna get real. We're gonna talk about Mr. Brian Bowen and Louisville situation here in just a bit. But this hit me this week, and I just want to keep it real. And I've often said we talk real on this show, just like you would talk in the barbershop or on the front porch or around your pawpaw or around your mama and them. We just try to keep it straight. But the NCAA, who is really, I think, from my perspective, holding sports back, not promoting sports, but holding sports back. They say it's all about education, Coach, and you're an educator by trade. You're a you're a high school basketball coach, a very successful one at that. But you're an educator before you're a high school basketball coach. In your opinion, is the NCAA more about the student athlete right now or generating bucks? What's going on?
Well, once you add that together, I think the student athlete is the one that's making the bucks. So for the schools and the universities. So I mean that's just obvious.
Right now, right now, I added this up last night before the show. If it's about education, NCAA, if it's about education, right now, universities around the country, Tennessee, Arizona State, Florida, Texas A&M, Arkansas, just to name a few, and we hadn't even got the total list of fired folks, Mississippi State and different folks, owe their coaches in college football over $60 million for not even showing up. Not even showing up. So NCAA, how can it be totally about education when that much money is on the floor? I mean, that's $60 million, Coach, and they don't even have to walk out there. They don't even have to do nothing. They don't have to, as my papa would say, they won't even have to hit a lick at a snake, you know? So, wouldn't you like to be fired with owed $8.5 million?
It'd be great. But let me explain something to you as well.
Yeah.
If you just looked at this scenario and those coaches that are being fired and you say it's coming out to be about $60 million, think about how much more the universities are making when you can pay someone that amount of money.
Right.
So it's
and I know what a lot of folks are going to say. Folks are going to say, well, that's the Athletic Association and that's a different budget. Don't tell me it's a different association. We all know how foundation monies are run under the table to keep things popular and keep things going. So, hey, I don't, a lot of people are fussing about these coaches walking away with this kind of money. I'm not fussing at them. Hey, they worked their way to get there. Congratulations. You owe them the money, pay them the money. And these players, how much did Mr. Bagley earn Duke this weekend in the PK80?
Well, I think it increased their following by a lot. Yes.
I mean, I'll put it to you this way. Think about this, 7 years ago now? How much did Mr. Oden and Mr. Conley earn Ohio State in basketball years ago? And you don't hear about Ohio State basketball much anymore. I mean, you do, but not in the same vein that you did. These players are earning these schools millions of dollars, not billions of dollars. Because if you owe $60 million, you're earning them billion. I heard a great interview last night at the PK80, and when we're talking about the PK80 was the big basketball tournament this weekend where Carolina faced Michigan State and Duke faced Florida. And they had an interview with Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. And he said, and I quote, Michael Jordan took the sport from an endorsement standpoint to a brand standpoint. Is there another player, Coach, and we didn't talk about this, and this is just off the top of my head, is there another player that you can think of that has done what Jordan, and I don't even know, I'm just going this way because we're talking about money, and we're talking about sports, and we're talking about the amount of money the NCAA makes. But is there another player that you can think of that is Jordan-esque and the type of following they have in basketball right now?
LeBron James.
All right. So this is going to bring the age-old question. In their prime, Coach, and is LeBron in his prime now or is he past his prime?
Well, I think he's leveled out. If he gets any better, it's going to be unbelievable because he's still doing things at his age that other people can't even compare to.
You got a $100 bill in your pocket, Coach. We're playing. Let's just pick a fictitious place. We're playing in Pauley Pavilion at UCLA. We got them in their prime. LeBron James against Jordan. Who's your money going on, Coach?
You trying to create a problem here today. I tell you what, I would love to see that game when they're both in their prime. But people are comparing those two guys right now, and the numbers are pretty close. But I think a lot of people are giving LeBron the edge. And then as a coaching...
Isaiah Thomas gave him the edge. Isaiah Thomas said LeBron beat him by 10 in a game of 21.
Well, I don't think they really got along well anyway. We're talking about Isaiah and Jordan.
I think he's jealous. I think he's jealous. I think Isaiah's jealous. Isaiah had the sweetest smile in the world, but I think he's a mean man sometimes when you see him.
Well, what happened is Chicago changed the insight of the game when they started beating Detroit. So I'm sure there's not a lot of love between Detroit and Chicago Bulls,
That's it. You know what? I'm going to say this. I've sat back and I watched Jordan play, and I've sat back and I watched LeBron play. I can tell, Coach, without you saying you leaning toward LeBron, but you don't want to go there. You don't want to go with me with Jordan. But I'm going to say I'd take Jordan. And here's why. Because I believe, number one, Jordan beat him off the dribble. That's number one. Then number two, I think Jordan beat him on the outside shot. I think LeBron had thrown too many bricks. I've seen LeBron, how many times have we seen LeBron dribble down the court, just shoot it up, boom, hit the back of the rim, and it goes off? I'll put it this way. The Atlanta Hawks, as bad as they are this year, never beat Michael Jordan when he won 70. Okay? And he never, when he was in his prime, never beat Michael Jordan. Never. So, and they tore up the Cleveland Cavaliers this year. They tore up. Brian Bowen, Louisville Cardinals. We talked to Stacey Davis last week, the FBI. And Louisville says Mr. Bowen, their top recruit, is allowed to stay in school. We'll give him his scholarship, but he will never be able to suit up and play for the Cardinals, and we'll give him a full transfer. Coach, what are you thinking? What are you thinking about all this?
Well, I think that's really bad that Louisville is now saying we don't want anything to do with the kid because, it's not his fault whatsoever, and he's a very talented kid, very young, very respectable young man. I know whoever gets him on their team is going to really get a really good player and a really good person. You
know what? Mr. Bowen, he could come out in the draft. He could just apply. That's an interesting question because it ain't one and done for him because he's never played. He hadn't suited up. I'm sure he could pull a Sean Kemp and go play for a junior college somewhere. If you remember correctly, back in the day, Kentucky signed Sean Kemp, coach, and then he ended up playing at some junior college or some school like Chattahoochee Tech in Texas, and then he went to the Seattle Supersonics. But Mr. Bowen could go that route, but. Rumors on the inside, Coach. You've heard some rumors. We won't tell who gave you these rumors, but where are you hearing he's going to end up, potentially?
Well, I would like for him to go to UCLA, but I hear Oregon or Oregon State is somewhere that he's looking to get into, and I'm sure they'd be glad to take him.
Well, Oregon would be happy to take him, to partner him, I'm sure, with the big monster they signed in Manute Bol's son, the all-NBA name, Boyle sign. Who would name their kid Boyle? Said that.
Moving forward, let's go.
Who would name their kid Boyle, Cody? Come on. But anyway, Boyle, great basketball player up in Seattle, signed with Oregon in the early season, and it'd be a great place for Mr. Bowen. Let me tell you what I think about Louisville doing this. I think they're using Mr. Bowen as a scapegoat. I honestly believe that. I believe that the kid did exactly what he was told to do. The kid followed the exact things the assistant coaches and Mr. Patino told him to do before he signed. If they did transfer some money to his parents or his handlers or to his friends, which he has been acquitted of, then if he's been acquitted, let him play. Okay? Even if he hadn't been acquitted, Coach, the coaches knew. Grown men who were supposed to be leading this young man told him what to do. They said, look, come to Louisville, we'll get you 100. Let's just say it's all wrong, okay? And I'm not even going to name a shoe company here, but I'm just going to say the shoe company A tells Louisville, hey, if you get this kid, we'll give his family $100,000. Coaches say, hey, kid, we'll give your family $100,000 if you come to Louisville. Guess what? Kid signs, kid goes. Kids should play because coaches are grown-ass men told him what to do. Just being honest with you, and you know what? They should hold the they should hold the keys to what happened. That's just my thought. Just goes back to how ugly the NCAA is. What do you think, Coach? Am I off base?
No, you're not off base because I just feel like he should be punished. Because this is the fallout of what happened, like you say, between the adults. So, I would let him play, but my voice is not heard.
Well, it's heard right here on Real Life Basketball. Darren Sutherland and Coach Doug Lipscomb coming to you. And thank you guys so much for listening to this great podcast. We've having a lot of fun doing it. And want to remind you once again, coming up this weekend, Milton High School, it's the Carriage Automotive Group Classic with Holy Innocents taking on Trinity Christian. Lithonia against Johnson of Savannah, Shiloh versus Langston Hughes, Pebblebrook and Jonesboro, and Milton and Rockdale County. And, Coach, I know this is a near and dear tournament to you. It's one that you've been involved in. And let's talk about some of these matchups real quick this weekend and what you're thinking. I know you don't have a favorite because all these guys that are coaching are your friends, and all these teams that are playing are good ball teams, or they wouldn't be here. But what are some of the games you like? What are some of the matchups, Coach? What do you think?
Well, starting out with Trinity Christian and Holy Innocents. Holy Innocents is a young team, but they're going to be well gelled by the end of the season. Trinity Christian, they're going to be good too. I want to see that game because they're going to go up and down. Johnson of Savannah is always good. They're playing Lithonia, who has very good guard play. Next game would be Shiloh and Langston Hughes. Those are two top teams in the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
And then you look at Pebblebrook, who's been fantastic over the last several years. They play a national schedule, and Jonesboro has been well known too.
Hey, and folks, if you don't know this, Colin Sexton, the Alabama player that scored 40 this week, is a graduate of Pebblebrook High School. Played with him last year, correct, Coach?
Yes, sir.
So you know what? I promise you, there's some good kids there with him. And then to close out the night, you got Milton and Rockdale.
Yes, Milton is a young team, very good guard play. Alan Whitehart's their coach, and the Rockdale team is young as well. So it's not going to be easy for any one of those teams.
Going to see some great young talent this Saturday at Milton High School in Alpharetta, Georgia. You don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it. Coach, we've talked about Mr. Bowen. We've talked about Colin Sexton. We've talked about the high school games this weekend. We've talked about the college games this weekend. I'm going to ask you, Coach, of all the games you've saw so far this year, and this is just me and you talking, this is unscripted, this is just totally off the cuff, what have you enjoyed the most? This is your first year outside the bounds of coaching. 600 wins, Coach. You've done it for 25 years. As a former coach, what have you enjoyed the most about sitting on the sidelines this year?
Well, I enjoy sitting and watching the game and just see how things are executed and the spacing that teams have and the relentlessness of just competitiveness. I like it when I see people just giving it their all. I saw a really good game between Wheeler and Buford. Those are really two top teams. I like the way both of them executed. It was some outstanding talent on the court. But I also saw Mount Verde, who looked like they just didn't belong in a high school arena. So,
R.J. Barrett and Mount Verde, out of how many Division I players Mount Verde have, you think, just from what you saw?
I would say 8, easy.
8. 8 coming out. Now, who'd you see them play? Do you recall? Where'd you see them?
It was at the Hoop Gibbons Classic this weekend.
Hoop Gibbons Classic this weekend. All right. Coach, when you're a team like Mount Verde, okay, and you're going into a game like that, and you've been in this situation before where you're going against a team that don't even look like a high school team, and you're going to coach that game. What are you thinking when you're the opposing coach? Are you thinking, let's slow it down? Are you thinking, what's going through your mind? You never want to back away from a challenge. What would you tell those high school coaches out there listening? Because we got a ton of high school coaches all across the country listening to us because of your background and what you bring to the table. What would you tell them about a game like this? Because some of them will face a Mount Verde not knowing they're going to face them. They're just in a tournament with them, and it's just the luck of the draw. What do you say to those guys?
Well, first of all, if you're in a tournament with someone of that caliber, you can pretty much look at the brackets and figure out I'm either going to play them the second game or the third game.
Right,
so
right.
That's not an issue. The thing is, I think it's your mindset, and I've always had confidence in my players, and we want to compete. I mean, we were fortunate enough to beat them in the City of Palms in the championship game, and I think that might have been the only loss in the career of Ben Simmons in high school. So, I mean, I've been blessed to have equally talented kids as well.
Wow. So I know two people that's big dominant players in my life. You beat Ben Simmons, And my wife is the only coach in the history of Gwinnett County, Georgia, to beat Maya Moore in basketball. She beat her in the 8th grade. Maya Moore may have been one of the greatest women's basketball players of all time, folks, of all time. Big college basketball games coming up this week. Big games this week. But here's what drives me crazy, Coach. And I'm going to throw this out there. You know, last week we mentioned Toccoa Falls losing by 102 points to a Appalachian State team, which they really probably shouldn't even been playing. When you're losing by 100 points, why even book the game other than money? But, NCAA doesn't do anything for money, so we shouldn't be, because it's all about the student athlete. But Gonzaga Wednesday night, Gonzaga is going to play Incarnate Word. Have you ever heard of Incarnate Word, Coach?
I have not.
How long you been coaching basketball, Coach?
33 years.
33 years. Never got a letter from Incarnate Word wanting to recruit any of your players, Coach?
Well, I can't even say where is that located?
That's what
Texas.
San Antonio, Texas. Incarnate Word, Cody, is going to play Gonzaga, the number 17 ranked Gonzaga.
They're transitioning from D2 to D1. Well, they already have, but they're not eligible for postseason play until next season.
Next season, we'll see Incarnate Word. What faith is that? That's got to be some faith-driven school, Cody. Where we at on that? Incarnate Word out of San Antonio.
Catholic University.
Private Catholic University in Texas. Going to take on the Zips of Gonzaga. And all you private Catholic schools, St. John's of the world, y'all ought to be ashamed for letting Incarnate Word even matching up against Gonzaga. They ought to be ashamed for even putting them on the schedule, Coach. That's like, quite frankly, Coach, this is going to sound awful, but that's like Wheeler, when you were coaching in your heyday, playing, I don't know,
An upward basketball
daggum upward basketball team. Are playing, I'm going to throw off on somebody just because I can. Fellowship Christian, how about that? Something like that. I mean, it's crazy. But you know what? I watched last night, Coach, and what do you do when you've never been in this situation, I'm assuming, where you're the coach of Incarnate Word, and you've got to go to Gonzaga, or you're the coach at Toccoa Falls, and you've got to go to Appalachian State, or you're at University of Chicago last night playing against Kentucky. I flipped that on the SEC Network, and I'm thinking, why is this even on TV? Well, what's the thing? Or how about this one, Coach? UT Rio Grande versus Texas A&M. How about that game? That sound wonderful?
I have no idea how that happened, unless it was just let me do y'all a favor and give you some money for traveling or something.
Hey, here's another one that we all like. Here's another one that we all appreciate. South Dakota taking on Duke. Now, let me say this. I'm gonna say this right here, and all right. And here's another one. NJIT versus West Virginia. Who is NJIT, Cody?
New Jersey Institute of Technology.
New Jersey Institute of Technology taking on Bob. I've never seen a hamburger I didn't like, Huggins, and the West Virginia Mountaineers. Coach.
It's a public research university.
It's a public research university. NCAA, if you want to do something, if you want to make some rules, let's make some rules. Coach, Chattahoochee Tech's got a team. You go over there and take over Chattahoochee Tech, and that coach is shaking his head. You don't want no Chattahoochee. You go take over Chattahoochee Tech, and y'all could go play Mark Fox in Georgia next year. That's what we're looking at here. What's up with this, Coach? Why are they scheduling these games? Does it help you, or does it just give you bench players and your walk-ons a place to play? What do you think?
Well, that's true, too. Everybody on the team should play that night. Of course, some people may worry about their stats and, their averages, but at the same time, I shake my head, because I don't really understand that. But you see how that's backfired is they tried that in football, and a couple of those teams that were had to give up $1 million to get beat at home.
That's right. Hey, think about it this way. Let's just talk about it like this. South Alabama beat Troy this year in football, okay? Troy beat LSU. LSU beat Auburn. And Auburn beat Georgia. So, and Auburn or Georgia going to end up in the national championship tournament coming up. Who knows? Big games this week in college basketball that I like, Coach. Let me look at the list here. I like the Cincinnati Xavier game on Saturday night. I'm a big Xavier guy. They've lost one. Going to be a good game. Wichita State and Baylor, another good game this weekend. Texas A&M, Coach, we got to mention Texas A&M in the SEC. I know earlier we talked about Florida and we talked about Alabama. You can't root out Texas A&M. Texas A&M's looking extremely well this year, don't you think?
I love that game. Texas A&M played USC, and I stated that I had a former player as a coach on Texas A&M and a former player on USC, and Texas A&M won.
Seton Hall takes on Louisville this weekend in a big game, and that's going to be a big one and a lot of good fun this week in college basketball. Now, the big matchups aren't there. The ACC Big Ten shootout is next week. So, it starts this week, actually. It starts this week. But you know what? The big game is, think about this. Think about how big this used to be. Duke, in Indiana. And now how abysmal that game is. I mean, Indiana can't even beat Indiana State, and they're playing Duke. Indiana, the pride of American high school basketball, can't even get a good team going anymore. Butler, probably the top team in the state of Indiana. So I guess Incarnate Word could be the best team in Texas before it's all over. Butler can win. What do you think, Cody? Incarnate Word could pull a program together?
I like their chances.
Who, Incarnate Word?
Yep.
Incarnate Word over Gonzaga.
NJIT too.
NJIT could be the biggest team in New Jersey before it's over with, Coach.
Are y'all on the PlayStation game or
yeah,
something?
well, that's what we own. That's what we own. I mean, I know I'm probably losing listener after listener on the Real Life Basketball Podcast, but we're just trying to keep it real, folks. Just trying to keep it real. Why in the world? We want to see real basketball. So let's talk real basketball for just a second, and let's go before we close out and go to the NBA, Coach, before we get out of here. James Harden keeps tearing it up, averaging 31 points a game, keeps taking it, but then again, he's leading the league in assists too. So what do you say?
We had that discussion. I told you he's top of the charts. I mean, he's scoring
off the chain. Mm-hmm. And you know, a player you talked about earlier is doing better and better. Ben Simmons, and from what I'm reading in the Philadelphia Inquirer, maybe he's got too many assists. Have you been hearing that? He ain't shooting enough.
Well, they've been saying the same thing about the ball kid at L.A., so, you know, I take the better over the worse.
Would you rather have, let me ask you this, if you're starting a team, okay, if you're the head coach, and I know we all want a dominant big man if we start in a team. That's the way I've always looked at it. Maybe you differ from me, but I've always wanted a dominant big man. If I could have a Shaquille O'Neal to start and build around, that's what I want. But if you could have a tremendous scorer, if you could have a Bernard King-like player that's just a pure scorer, or if you could have a Jason Kidd-like player that's a pure assist man, who you want to start the team?
Russell Westbrook.
Somebody can do both of it.
Average a triple-double.
So average a triple-double, that's it. Real life basketball last week, Cody, me and you are 0-1. Mm-hmm. We both lost our games. I took Alabama over Minnesota, and because the ref stole a game from Alabama and Colin Sexton, Alabama, the unranked Crimson Tide, Roll Tide, loses to the Golden Gophers. Cody, who'd you have last week?
I had I had Baylor losing to Wisconsin.
Baylor losing to Wisconsin.
And pulled it out by 5 points.
Baylor beat it. But, any team that can run can beat Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Because, we all know Wisconsin cannot run. Coach, you won it last week. Cody, we're going to start off with you. Who is your upset special this week? What game are you looking at that's just an upset?
Thursday night, I'm going to go Notre Dame over Michigan State.
Notre Dame over Michigan State. Coach, I heard Dickie V is very high on Notre Dame this year. Mm-hmm. But beating Michigan State, that's a tall order, don't you think?
It's very tall.
I don't think you got it, Cody. Coach, you think he's got a shot at it?
He does have a shot, but Michigan State's going to play. If they're at home, they're going to play out the box.
Nah, I don't think Michigan State's going to lose again anytime soon. Anytime soon. Coach, my upset special. Y'all ready for this one? This is going to be a big upset because they're going to Davidson to play. But the Tar Heels are going to Davidson. This is a game Davidson's had marked on their calendar since this summer to play the Tar Heels in their home state. All the kids for Davidson grew up wanting to play for the Tar Heels or against the Tar Heels. Davidson, Seth Curry's old team, has everything to win. North Carolina has everything to lose in this in-state matchup. Upset special of the week, I'm taking Davidson over North Carolina. North Carolina let down coming out of that PK80, and they're going to be a tough game on them, Coach. What do you think?
I agree. But see, I think UNC is going to bounce back because they're going to have a tough game earlier in the week. They're going to play Michigan.
Yeah, they are playing Michigan. So, they could go 0-2 this week. Go three losses in a row.
Michigan to beat UNC.
So we've got UNC as an upset special this week from one of us. Who knows? Closest game of the week. I'm just going to pick one. We're all going to pick. Last week, Coach won this one. Number 6, Wichita State takes on number 22, Baylor. Cody, who you liking? You going against the Baylor Bears this week?
No, I'll go with Wichita State in this one.
I got to go with Wichita. What are you thinking, Coach?
I'm going with Baylor.
Going with Baylor. Coach pulling it out. You're listening to Real Life Basketball. You heard it right here. And want to remind you once again, come on out Saturday night, 2:30, Milton High School. Holy Innocents against Trinity Christian. Lithonia against Johnson at Savannah. Shiloh, Langston Hughes, Pebblebrook against Jonesboro. And Milton against Rockdale. Coach, been a good show, been a fun show, been a fast show today. These 45 minutes travel fast, don't they, Cody?
They do. They go pretty quick.
They go pretty quick. Hey, once again, I want to remind you, tell your friends, tell your family, tell anybody that loves basketball anywhere in the world. Shoot them an email, shoot them a text. Download Real Life Basketball. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. It's Real Life Basketball on the BG Podcast Network.